As already announced, this workshop will focus on comma, okay, in particular, okay, as a punctuation mark and pertaining to the English language writing. So comma has many uses in the English language, and we're going to go over the details. Okay, we're also going to focus on the usages themselves rather than the technical terminology. So I will try to keep the technical terms involved in this presentation to a minimum. So let's start by establishing, okay, the what's a comma? Okay, well, it's an obvious punctuation mark that we all use. Now, the most important thing, okay, about a comma that we need to pay attention to is that it is a mark of separation, okay, between phrases or clauses within the sentence, within the sentence. Now, that's extremely crucial when it comes to the definition of a comma, okay, and we're going to see how and why throughout this workshop. So let's get started. Once we establish that a comma works only within the sentence, and that's by definition, okay, then we proceed from that. So keep that in mind as we go through the workshop. Now, why do we use commas? Okay, well, first of all, to separate the different entities, the different phrases, the different clauses within a sentence. And that separation is needed to clarify the meaning. That's the only thing. Now, in order to understand what I mean by clarifying meanings of a sentence, okay, consider the two sentences on the slide. The first one, a woman without her man is nothing. And I'm trying to read it without any pause, because usually a comma signifies a pause in speech, okay, or corresponds to a pause in speaking. Okay, so if I say a sentence, okay, like that, a woman without her man is nothing, okay, then probably as a listener, you wouldn't get the meaning. Okay, in writing, okay, you didn't have pauses, but you have commas. Okay, so depending on where you place a comma in this sentence, the meaning will be clarified. Keep these sentences at the back of your mind. Think of the different meanings of this sentence. Think of the different places of a comma, okay, to get the meaning. Also, by the same token, the second sentence also, the fortune is equally divided among the wife, the two sons and daughter, okay. Now, both of these sentences are perfectly fine. Now, the commas should actually help to clarify the meaning. Okay, so keep these sentences in your mind. Take a screenshot if you wish. Okay, and think about them. Think about the different meanings, different places of commas. Okay, and probably we'll go back again to the slide. Okay. Now, we should actually start by rule number 2, okay, because I have switched the slides, so that might be a mistake. Okay, let's look at the rule and let's see the examples. Okay, use commas to separate words and word groups in a series of 3 or more items. For example, the first sentence on the slide, I had a burger, fries, and a soda for dinner last night. The next sentence, okay, Muhammad, comma, Ali, comma, and Shema have successful careers. So whenever you have a list, okay, of 3 items,
Doctor, I'm sorry for interrupting, but the slide doesn't show up.
Okay, let me try and share them again. Okay, just give me a second. Are they clear now?
Yes, I just.
Okay. Okay, so let me go over the slide again. So use a comma to separate items of 3 or more. Okay, any series. Okay, whether that be in the beginning of the sentence or at the end of the sentence, whether it's in the subject position of the sentence or in the verb phrase. Okay, or within the verb phrase. Okay, now the red commas, okay, on this slide, okay, can be actually omitted, can be they can be deleted. Okay, it's just a matter of the clarity of meaning. If the meaning is clear, okay, if the meaning is clear, then there is no problem. Then we can actually delete them. For example, in the first sentence here, I had a burger, fries, and a soda. We can delete the comma, the red comma there. It can be deleted. Okay. The same thing in the second sentence. Okay. Now remember the first thing that we mentioned about commas, that we need them to clarify the meaning. Okay. So if the meaning is clear, then we should not add any commas. Let's move on. This is in rule number 3. Okay. The previous one was in rule number 2. Okay. Use a comma to separate 2 adjectives when the word and can be inserted between them. Now, across our writing, we sometimes use multiple adjectives. Okay. And instead of using and when we have 2 adjectives, we can actually insert a comma there. Okay. Now, if these adjectives can be correctly connected by and without interrupting the meaning, without corrupting the meaning, then we can just omit and replace it with a comma. Look at the examples in front of you. The orphan lived a miserable, comma, sad life before he was adopted by the benevolent family. Now, miserable and sad, they are called coordinate adjectives, and thus we can actually separate them by a comma. Notice if I say, for example, the orphan lived a miserable and sad life, that is still be okay. That is still be okay. Let's look at the second example here to clarify also the meaning of this rule. The businessman, okay, booked an expensive summer resort. The businessman booked an expensive summer resort. Now, if you try, okay, and if you try to analyze the sentence here, okay, especially the last part, okay, after the verb booked, okay, we have an expensive, the word expensive, and we have the word summer, okay, both are modifying the word resort. Okay, so basically we have 2 technically adjectives here, the word expensive and the word summer. Now, if you try to insert and between expensive and summer, okay, the sentence wouldn't make any sense. So an expensive summer resort, okay, is perfectly well and doesn't need any comma. Okay, now what about the other sentence? Okay, the last one. I get headaches in brightly lit rooms. Can we insert a comma between brightly and the word lit? Not really, since brightly here is an adverb and it's not an adjective. Okay, it's an adverb that modifies the word lit. Okay, so we don't need a comma here. Rule number 5. Use commas before surrounding the same or a title, surrounding the name or the title of a person directly addressed. So if that in writing is is in the second person, okay, then you should use a comma. Look at the example. Will you, Aisha, do that assignment for me? So the pronoun you, okay, is actually addressed to Aisha. So I'm talking to Aisha directly, but by that question, okay, that's the understood meaning of the question. Will you, Aisha? So I'm addressing Aisha. I'm talking to Aisha. Okay, will you do that assignment for me? So if I'm writing, okay, and I have a sentence where the where I should, for example, address someone, okay, in that manner, then the name of that person should be between two commas. The titles also, for example, in a sentence, for example, if you respond, yes, doctor, I will. Yes, doctor, I will. Okay, the word doctor is the title. Okay, so it should be between commas. To differentiate that from other contexts, look at the third example here. Professor Abdullah gave a powerful speech. Professor Abdullah gave a powerful speech. Now, we are not addressing Professor Abdullah here. Okay, we're talking about Professor Abdullah. So Professor Abdullah here technically is a third person, is a person who is spoken about in this specific sentence. So since we're not addressing Professor Abdullah in this sentence, then we don't need any comma. We don't need any commas. The sixth rule for using a comma, okay, is to separate the day of the month from the year, and also after the year. Okay, look at the examples in front of you. Okay, Kathleen met her husband on December 5th, comma, 2003, comma, in Mill Valley. So after the date, okay, December 5th, we should have a comma. And also after the year, we should have a comma, regardless of the position of the date. Even if it's in the subject position, we should have these commas. Okay. Now, look at the other example. Okay. Kathleen met her husband in December 2003. Okay. In Mill Valley. In that example, when we didn't have the date, okay, specifically the day, okay, then we can actually omit the comma. Rule number 7. Use a comma to separate the city from the state after the state. Okay. Now, let's look at these examples. Okay. I have lived in Rochester, comma, Michigan, comma, for 2 years. I have lived in Rochester, comma, Michigan, for 2 years. So the comma after the state, the word Michigan, which refers to the US state Michigan, okay, can be deleted, okay. So it's optional after the state, but it's mandatory after the region or the town, which is Rochester. Okay, you can apply that, for example, to any geographical location. Okay, so for example, if I say I live in Ad-Dir'iyah, Riyadh, then there should be a comma after the word Ad-Dir'iyah. Okay. Next rule, number 8. Use commas to separate independent clauses when they are joined by any of these 7 coordinating conjunctions. Okay. Now these technically, or in the literature, okay, are known as the fanboys. Okay, the acronym, okay, that is taken, okay, is fanboys, and they refer to the words in front of you: and, but, for, or, nor, so, yet. So once you have or once you connect two sentences or two clauses with these words, with these or with any of these fanboys, then you should add a comma before the fanboys, before the word. Look at the example. The game was over, but the crowd refused to leave. So we're connecting two sentences. The game was over, that's the first sentence. The second sentence, the crowd refused to leave. When I connect them with the word but, I should have a comma. I should add a comma before the word but. The same rule applies for the rest of these fanboys. Okay. Yesterday was her brother's birthday, so she gave him a present. Before the connecting word, before the coordinating conjunction, before the fanboys, there should be a comma, always. Rule number 9. Okay. Use commas after introductory clauses, usually with words such as after, although, as, because, if, since, when, while. Okay. You can add to these lists. Okay. And basically we're referring to a compound sentence in this rule here. Okay. We're referring to compounding sentences where you have an independent clause attached to a dependent clause. Now, if you start with any of these words, okay, if you start with the dependent clause, okay, then you should have a comma immediately after the dependent clause. Notice the examples here. Because she was an excellent student, she received an award. Because she was an excellent student, she received an award. Now, we started with the word because, and then when the first sentence, or the first clause to be more accurate, ended, okay, we placed a comma. Because she was an excellent student. That's the end of the first clause. So a comma right immediately after it. And then the rest of the sentence, which is the independent clause. She received an award. The same thing applies for all of these words. Take a look at the second example. After the lecture had finished, comma, they discussed its new ideas. After the lecture had finished, comma, they discussed its new ideas. Okay, so when you start with words like after, although, as, because, okay, if you start with these, okay, then the first clause that you have, the clause that is attached to these words, is called a dependent clause. And right after that dependent clause, you must have a comma. You must have a comma. Now, there is a second, okay, case, okay, and they are presented in the next set of examples. Whenever these words are placed in the middle of the sentence, commas should not be used. Okay. For example, he witnessed a bank robbery of a local bank while he was waiting for the bus. He witnessed the bank robbery of a local bank while he was waiting for the bus. Now, since the word while occurred in the middle of the sentence, okay, then there shouldn't be any commas. There shouldn't be any comma. That's why, for example, you see that this is incorrect. And the only incorrect part of this sentence is just the comma. It's just the comma. So whenever you use these connecting words, okay, in the middle of the sentence, if you connect two clauses, okay, and you place the dependent clause after the independent clause, then you should not include any commas at all. Okay. The second example, for example, in front of us, he took a deep breath. Okay. As he was about to give a speech, as he was about to give a speech. So the dependent clause comes after the independent clause. Thus, we do not need any commas right there. And this is, by the way, one of the common mistakes among students that I see on a daily basis. Okay, so this is a trivial and a minor mistake, but it should be avoided. The next rule says use commas after introductory phrases such as a participle and infinitive phrases and long prepositional phrases. Okay. Now, prepositional phrases here, okay, are a little bit controversial as to how long a prepositional phrase can be in order to have a comma. But if it's 3 or more, then you should probably have a comma rather than just 4 words if the prepositional phrase. Let's look at the examples and let's see what we mean by, for example, what we mean by a participle and infinitive phrase. So a participle phrase is like the example, serving as a police officer. That's a participle phrase. And notice it's not a clause as we have previously discussed because it doesn't have a clear subject and a verb. So serving as a police officer, that's a participle phrase, and it serves as an adjective to the pronoun he. But if we start the sentence in that format, in that way, then after finishing the participle phrase, we should have a comma. The second sentence is a famous quote by Shakespeare. To be or not to be, that is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. The infinitive phrase here is to be or not to be. That's the infinitive phrase. So I started with an infinitive phrase, then I should have a comma before the subject of the sentence. Now, a prepositional phrase, especially a long one, I would say 3 words or more, to be more specific, requires a comma, especially if you start a sentence with a prepositional phrase. So during COVID-19 lockdown, that's a prepositional phrase. She had some free time to read a couple of novels. She had some free time to read a couple of novels. Next rule, use commas after introductory words, such as well, or yes and no, however, thus, furthermore, any transitional word, to add to these, So generally speaking, you can refer to them as introductory words. And as I said, I'm not really keen in this presentation about the technical terminology. I'm going to try to present it as just a writing issue. That's it. I'm trying to avoid the technical terminology here. So any word that you use as a transition word, if you start the sentence with it, then you should place a comma. Look at the examples in front of you. Well, he probably didn't mean what you thought. After the word well, you should have a comma to clarify the meaning. That's for sure. Yes, I will be available today. After the word yes, you should have a comma. A transition word like thus, comma, the story of a legend ended. So in any case where you have a transition word, or an introductory word, then you should have a comma after that word immediately. The next rule, use a pair of commas, in the middle of a sentence to set off clauses, phrases, and words that are not essential to the meaning of the sentence. Okay. Now, everything we mentioned about introductory phrases or clauses or words, okay, can be also, and we can change their positions to be in the middle of the sentence. And once we do so, we should place that phrase or that clause or that word between two commas. So in the beginning of a sentence, it's just a single comma after the phrase or after the clause or after the word. In the middle of a sentence, they should be placed between two commas. Look at the examples. Okay, the man serving as a police officer, that's the participle phrase that we have seen a similar one to a few minutes or people probably a few seconds ago. The man felt proud. That's the sentence. That's the essential sentence. This is the sentence that would deliver the meaning. The man felt proud. Now, the phrase serving as a police officer, okay, is a participle phrase, and it modifies the word man here. Okay. Now, is it essential to the meaning? Not really. Not really. So we can actually place it, or we should place it between two commas. Now, the word here, okay, or the expression not essential, really depends on the writer more than anything else. Okay, but there are rules, okay, to govern that. Okay, and probably I will tell just a single rule. Okay, after we deal with the couple of examples here. Okay, so let's look at the second example. The family, after leaving the park, went to a restaurant to grab a meal. The family, and we have a prepositional phrase here, after leaving the park, that's a phrase, okay, went to a restaurant to grab a meal. So the initial meaning of the sentence is delivered by the following words: the family went to a restaurant to grab a meal. So after leaving the park is an extra piece of information. Okay, this is why we call it not essential. Okay, this is why we call it not essential. Okay, let's look at the third example here. King Saud University, okay, which is the oldest university in Saudi Arabia, has more than 55,000 students. Now, the meaning of the sentence is basically King Saud University has more than 55,000 students. The clause here, the adjective clause, which is the oldest university in Saudi Arabia, that's an extra piece of information that the writer included, okay, and wants you to know. But is it essential to the meaning? No, the meaning absolutely can be delivered by just saying King Saud University has more than 55,000 students. So, is there a rule to govern essential versus non-essential pieces of information? Well, there's a vague rule here, and I'm going to say it and jeopardize okay my knowledge by saying it. So if you mention a proper noun, okay, then probably any kind of information after that proper noun, okay, is considered non-essential or not essential. But if you mention a name, okay, then any kind of information you mention it after that common noun is considered essential. What I mean by proper noun, okay, if you're not familiar with the term, proper noun refers to nouns like nouns of entities like King Saud University, like Dhaifallah, like Muhammad, like like Saudi Arabia, like these are proper nouns. So if you mention these, okay, and you should be careful, because when you write, okay, you are actually the determinant, the one who determines actually what is essential. But generally speaking, if you mention the proper noun, okay, then what you mention after that is probably would be considered as an extra piece of information or non-essential information. Okay, but it's not a rule of thumb. It's not something that you would take as a clear cut and then you base everything about. But uh, for most cases, it would work. Okay, a common noun, it's just any noun that would refer uh, to things without being specific. For example, if I say the building, okay, if I say King Saud University, everyone knows King Saud University. It's a specific entity and we capitalize it all the time. Okay, if I say the building, it's not capitalized. I'm just referring to just any kind of a building. So this is to clarify that rule. So once you insert a non-essential information between or within a sentence, then you should have that part of the sentence between two commas. Rule number 13, use a comma near the end of a sentence to separate a contrasted coordinate elements or to indicate a distinct pause or shift. Now, look at the examples and then the rule would clarify itself. We will find a solution to this problem. That's the first example in front of you. We will find a solution to this problem, comma, no matter how difficult it is. No matter how difficult it is. So that extra piece of information, okay, in order to contrast with the previous clause, okay, when you have that piece, okay, then you should place a comma before that. Then you should place a comma before that. Look at the second example, okay. You are the reporter from the local TV station, comma, aren't you? All tag questions. The question here, aren't you, or don't you, or haven't you, these are called tag questions in grammar. Okay, so with that in mind, before all tag questions, you should have a comma. You should have a comma. Rule number 14. Use a comma to shift between the main discourse and a quotation. Now, if you write, okay, and especially in literary writing, where there is or there are a lot of direct speeches quoted, then this would apply. Okay, let's look at these sets and see how commas apply there. Okay, so let's look at this. The first example, she asked vaguely, okay, comma after that, and then you report the exact words, okay, of that person, and this is why you include quotation marks. Okay, so before the quotation, okay, you should have a comma. So she asked vaguely, comma, who are you? Notice the whole thing. She asked vaguely, who are you? That's the whole sentence. That's the whole sentence. So this is why, for example, we have just a question mark at the end. Okay. Now, the same applies for all other verbs. For example, she asked, she told, or she responded. Okay. If you write a direct quotation, then you should have a comma after the verb, okay, and before actually the quotation, immediately before the quotation mark. Now, in the second example, okay, this is a second way of writing direct speech. So I was able Now the sentence delivered, okay, is I was able to complete the assignment. This is the answer. This is the exact words of that woman, okay, referred to by the pronoun she. Okay, so what she said is exact words. I was able to complete the assignment. Now, reporting that speech, okay, I can actually write it in the following way. I can say, for example, I would take a first part, I was able, place it between quotation marks, and before closing the quotation, I would place a comma, and I would say she answered, then a comma, then I would open the quotation marks again to complete the rest of the speech. Okay, and then finish up with the period. The third example here. In 1848, Marx wrote, comma, okay, workers of the world, comma, unite. Now here we have different types of commas rules, okay, in this specific sentence. So after the year, okay, in 1848, comma, that's one of the rules that we have already discussed. Marx wrote, okay, comma, this is what we're talking about when we deal with direct quotation. Okay, then we have the workers of the world. Now he is addressing the workers of the world. So, comma, unite. So this is how, for example, we place a comma to deal with direct quotation in different settings or different ways. Okay. Rule number 15. Okay. Never use a comma before the word that or its clauses. Okay. Usually the word that, if it's included, okay, usually it can be, or it can work as a noun phrase, okay, at the beginning of a sentence, or as an object of a verb. Okay. Once you have that, you should not have a comma before the word that. So that he could speak Chinese surprised me. Obviously, this is without any doubt. Okay, at the beginning of a sentence, you cannot actually begin with a comma, no matter what. Okay. Now look at the second example. I think that homework assignments should be banned from schools. I think, and then I have a whole clause, that clause, okay, as an object to the verb think. Okay. So that homework assignment, we cannot use a comma before the word that. Okay. The next rule, okay, never separate the subject from the verb with a comma. Okay. So in any sentence in the English language, no matter how long or short the sentence, no matter how long or short the subject, you should never separate the subject from the verb with a comma. Okay. So if I say he was about to leave his job, okay, and then I place a comma after the pronoun he, that's a mistake. Okay. If I say this workshop on commas is fascinating, okay, and I place a comma after the word commas, that's a mistake. You should not separate a subject from the verb of a sentence at all. Now, the last rule, okay, the last rule, and the most important one, and especially among Arab writers, okay, I find it's very common, okay, and it should be the first rule, okay, never ever use a comma to end a sentence. Never ever use a comma to end a sentence. Okay. Now, the this is what is referred to as a comma splice. Okay, and the comma splice would result in a run-on sentence. Well, if you just leave this workshop with that rule, I would be more than happy, because it's very common, especially among Arab writers, that they feel the necessity, for example, or probably by just the effect of the use of punctuation in Arabic, which allows to separate sentences by commas, okay, whenever the writer felt needed, okay, they would apply the same thing to the English language when actually sentences are ended with periods, full stops, and that's it. Okay, so if I take a sentence, for example, he loves cooking, comma, he's great at making curries, okay, then that's a mistake. That would be considered a run-on sentence, okay, and it's very common, and it's a terrible mistake to make. So these are the general rules, okay, that you can actually or you should get out of this workshop, okay, especially this one. This is really important, okay. Never end a sentence with a comma at all, no matter what, especially an independent sentence. A full sentence should never be ended with a comma, okay. Now, for the time being, I would like to welcome any questions that you might have, or let's do some exercises that a couple of exercises that I have along with the workshop. Let's go with the exercises, okay. Now, let's see if the commas in these examples are used correctly, okay, in the following sentence. Let's take A in the beginning, okay. While he sat idly in the house, we have comma number 1. His brother went shopping, and then there's a comma number 2. Picked up the laundry, and we have a comma number 3, and paid utilities bills, okay. Now, number 1, is this a correct placement of the comma? Okay. Well, number 1 is correct. Why? Because we have the word while. Exactly. So we have the word while here, okay, and it starts a dependent clause, and that clause ends right after the word house, okay. So we need a comma here since we started a dependent clause, okay. Now let's look at number 2, okay. His brother went shopping. Is that a correct placement of a comma, or should we just go ahead and just say without the comma? Well, I can see some answers. Yes, it's correct. Okay. So number 2 also is a correct placement. Number 3, and paid utilities. Okay, it's also correct. So what I want to refer here to is the following: is that you can have, for example, different verb phrases for the same subject. So basically, we're talking about the brother. The brother actually did the shopping, picked the laundry, and also paid the bills. Okay, so different verb phrases can be separated by commas. They're considered also the as a list. You can consider them as a list. When we say the list of 3 or more, basically we're referring to nouns. Even applies to verbs, okay, as per this sentence here. Reem Saeed also said it can be omitted. Yes, it can be omitted. It doesn't actually violate the meaning if you omit the comma. Okay. Number 2, okay, or B. The house is ideally situated on a green hilltop. Now, is this a correct placement? Okay, in number 4. No, it's incorrect. Okay, yep. So it's incorrect. Why? Because it separates the adverb from the adjective, which shouldn't happen, as we previously mentioned. Okay. C. My name is Dhaifallah. Okay, comma. I love writing, comma. It's an excellent way to express oneself. Okay. Now, in C, okay, number 5, is it correct or not? Yes, no? Number 5? Okay. Well, actually, both number 5 and number 6, okay, are incorrect. Thank you. They're incorrect. And this is what we refer by rule number 1, okay? Never end a sentence with a comma. So my name is Dhaifallah. That's a complete sentence, okay? And it should end with a period. It's a short one, okay? I understand the feeling that, well, yes, I can connect it with a comma. It wouldn't hurt, actually. I can understand the meaning. But the rules of the English language doesn't allow for that structure to happen. So both number 5 and number 6 are or should be replaced by periods, okay? Letter D. He was incapable of leading a bowling team, okay, comma, let alone a country. That's number 7. Now, is this a correct placement of the comment number 7? It is correct. It is correct. Okay. Let's look at the another set of exercises. Okay. Let's see if we need actually commas in these sentences. Okay. And we should finish up with these sentences. Okay. Is a comma needed? Okay, in the following sentences? If yes, where? Okay. Now, A, oil, which is lighter than water, raises to the surface. Okay. Do we need a comma? That's the first question here. Do we need a comma? Yes, we need a comma. Okay. We need a comma. I see contradicting answers. We need a comma. Okay. Because, and where to place the comma? To place it exactly after the word oil and after the word water. Okay, which is lighter than water. This is an extra information. Okay, the meaning can be delivered safely without any problem. If I say, for example, oil raises to the surface, that's it. Okay, yes, Rahab, that's correct. Okay, so oil, okay, comma, which is lighter than water, comma, okay, raises to the surface. Now, is there a problem if I place a comma before the verb here, raises? We said we should never separate the subject from the verb, if you remember. Now, after the word water here in A, can we place a comma? Anyone? Yes, we should. Okay, and basically we're not separating the subject, as a matter of fact. Okay, as a matter of fact, we're not separating a subject, but actually we're separating the extra piece of information identified by the clause, which is lighter than water. Okay, so excellent, excellent. Number B, she was an attractive, gorgeous lady. Now, do we need a comment here in B? Yep, exactly. Okay, so after the word attractive, we need a comma. Okay, why? Because a simple test, okay, that you can do, if you can insert and between the two adjectives, then you should insert a comma. Okay, if I say can, or I can say, for example, she was an attractive and gorgeous lady, perfectly fine. So we should place a comma. C, the contractor testified that the house was completed and that the work had been done properly. Do we need a comma in C? Okay, I see some of you say no, no, no. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Well, we need a comma. We need a comma, and exactly before the word and. Now remember the fanboys. Okay, for, and, but, nor, so, and yet. Okay, once they connect two sentences, okay, you should place a comma before the connecting word. So the contractor testified that the house was completed, comma, and that the work had been done properly. Okay. Number D, the uninvited guest wore a dark blue tweed suit. Do we need a comma? Okay. 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 I see a controversy here, and I see yes, yes, yes. Well, okay. Okay, there is also an excellent answer saying after the word dark. Well, I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but we don't need any commas in here. Okay, a dark blue. Okay, a dark blue is just an adjective to the tweed. Okay, which is the material from which the suit is made. Okay, so we're having different kinds of adjectives here. We have different kinds of adjectives. Okay, and basically if I say dark and then I say blue, I mean, if I say, for example, he wore a dark and blue, okay, to the one who suggested the comma between dark and blue, well, that wouldn't make any sense. Basically, I want to refer to the color as a dark blue color. So I'm using the two words dark blue to refer to the color. That's the first adjective. Then tweed, that's the material from which the suit is made. So there is no need for a comma here. Okay. Number E, March 17th, 2021 is a day that I will remember forever. And it is. Okay. Do we need a comma here? We need a comma. Okay. We need after the number 17 and the number 2021. That's absolutely right. And the last example that we have here is Mark Twain's early novels, I believe, stand the test of time. Do we need the commas? Yes, absolutely, Dr. Muhammad and Dihab. Okay, you're right, absolutely right. So we're dealing now with F. Okay, do we need a comma here? Okay, an F. Mark Twain's early novels, I believe, stand the test of time. So if we need a comma, where to place the commas? Okay. So if you notice the phrase, okay, I believe. Yep, exactly. Exactly, Al-Hanuf. Yep. Before the pronoun I and after the verb believe, because this is an introduction, I mean interjection, okay, to the sentence. And the meaning basically is Mark Twain's early novels stand the test of time. So I inserted, okay, a word or a phrase like I believe, okay, or a clause rather than that, and that should be placed between two commas. Thank you all for joining the workshop. I hope it was a useful one, an interesting one for all of you. Could you please respond to the poll in front of you? And if you have any question, I'll be more than happy to respond to your questions.